Sorry?
That I'm good to go.
Sweet. Easy. Right. Welcome to the podcast, Miranda Miller. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's all right. You've been at the top of my list for a while, ever since listening to the Vital podcast you did with Spoma. It's definitely
yeah.
it's like one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
That's right. How's things been this year for traveling and racing and everything going for you?
Yeah, pretty good. I feel like this year has been cool. I don't know. Last year was kind of it was just so weird. Like even if you pretended like it wasn't weird, it was really weird. Like when you actually got to the races, it just wasn't the same, and it was kind of like it kind of bummed me out a bit. I think like it was just like like we did all this to come do this, you know, like
okay.
It wasn't the same. I mean, that's not like anyone's fault. It's just like the way the situation was. And so this year's been really cool to kind of like get back. And I really like the double headers at the Enduro because you kind of just got thrown in and you were just go, 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 go. And I thought that was pretty cool. And you're starting to see more people come and watch the races. And there's like some battles between the guys and some of the women too. So it was kind of cool just to jump all in, you know?
Last year seemed like it was a bit more individual and some people almost feeling kind of like lonely, like because everyone was so separated, whereas this year it's kind of getting back to normal.
Yeah, and like last year, everyone was just like, I don't know, I think maybe everyone was still like on edge too, right? Because like you're traveling internationally for the first time, you don't really know like where you're allowed to go or, you know, like how it was all kind of going to go down. And it just seemed way more, like no one was hanging out. No one was, you know, there was no fans. There was no culture to the races really. You're just like, like the culture was gone. So you kind of just showed up. You did your own thing. You showed up for the start line and and, you know, some people took it well and, you know, killed it. And I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to use a phrase I hate, but are you someone that feeds off of that vibe or that kind of having more people around?
I think I do to a certain degree.
Okay.
I would say I like just the energy. I don't necessarily like it when it's focused on me, but I like having the energy, you know, like maybe I don't actually do super well under really high pressure things, but I like having it around me because it makes you, I don't know, it's funny. It's like I want to be in that position, but then when I am, I like don't really know how to handle it. So it's almost like if you have an energy around you, you're like, oh yeah, like I want to like get to the top and like be the one that people are like paying attention to. But then when you are that person, I like don't really know what to do, or I'm not very good at it. So I'm actually probably better when no one's paying attention, but I still like to have the energy around me, you know, like, so maybe I like it, but then when it's focused on me, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. You want to be a part of that energy and not the focus of it, right? Like, yeah.
Maybe it's like a cat, you know, you're like, pay attention to me, but not too much attention to me. You know? Like me, but don't like me too much.
Has it been hard to find that balance over your career? Like, because you've had some moments where there's been tons of attention on you, and then you've obviously had the other moments where there's been almost not enough.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always admired people that can kind of like use that energy and really like just get better from it. And I think for me, it was weird when that focus was on me. It was after I won world champs. And that to me is something that I never really like felt I had like deserved, you know, like I think I should have, you know, it's hard to say, like I am proud of it, but like there's a part of it just with like, you know, the timing and everything with pom-pom that you're kind of like, well, you know, like there's always that kind of like thing to it. So then I had all this like attention on me, and I felt like I didn't deserve it at the time. And so then it was like a weird mindset of like wishing that I could like own it, but like not being confident to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, because looking from the outside, it seemed like everyone thought that you finally had the attention you deserved, but then to hear you say that you don't deserve it, it's kind of like a weird conundrum, right? Like, how did you kind of deal with that mindset going into the next races? Because everything seemed to accelerate at that time, going to specialized racing team and then the world champs. Like, that's a lot of expectation on you.
Yeah, and like that whole season was, so like 2017, that was my first year on Specialized Gravity, and that was like pretty surreal for me. You know, that was something like, that was like the pinnacle of teams, you know, and I always looked up to that team, and for me to be on that team never really felt real. Like, it was like too insane for me.
Yep.
Because I'd been a privateer for so long. Like, I was 27 when I signed to that team, and so like up until then, since I was, you know, 19, I'd been a privateer. So that's like almost 10 years of like not having support, to then going to like my first team being literally like the biggest and best team. And so it was really hard to like, for me to go into that position next to Loic and next to Finn and like feel like I deserve to be there. And that was 100% me. Like, that team is honestly like, it's unreal. Like, how like they just welcomed me in, and like I'm still really good friends with everyone there, and I love those guys. And it was like they fully had my back, you know. Like, it was pretty cool that they were French. They didn't even know me, but they were just like, all right, like she's on the team, she's one of us, you know. And that was super cool, and it was like probably one of the best experiences of my life. But I didn't know how to deal with it. Like, you dream of something, and then it actually becomes real, and then you're like, oh shit, now what do I do? You know. And so, and I got pretty badly injured that first year. I'd torn my PCL and like bruised my femur and my tibia in Fort William. And so all season I just like was trying to race, but I like couldn't really race, you know. Like, I couldn't even like do a squat. Like, my leg was just constantly swollen. But I was like, well, I'm on this team, like I have to try, you know. And I just couldn't do it. And I kind of just like dug myself into like a mental hole, because like instead of recognizing that I was hurt and I couldn't physically do it, I just started like blaming myself for not being able to do it. You know, like meant like, oh, I'm just not like good enough or whatever, when really I had like a pretty serious injury that I like didn't have enough time to rehab. And so I went to that world champs being like, this is going to be my last race with the team. And it was, you know, like it was the reality of it. Like, you know, I had no results. I'd pretty much been injured. I could barely qualify. I could barely ride. And I was like starting to feel a little bit better on my bike. And so I went there, and there was the reality. I was like, this is the last trip I get to do with these guys. And so I was like, fuck, might as well enjoy it, you know. like this is like literally my dream come true. So, and it was hard because like I should have been enjoying it the whole season, but I'd wanted to do something more. And so, and then I won Worlds. And so that pretty much bought me another year on the team, you know. Like, I was like, oh shit, I can stay. But then it was really hard going forward from that, because then the next season I was battling with more injuries, and same thing. It was instead of recognizing that there was something wrong, I just sort of started like beating myself up and like being like, oh, like, you know, like, you don't, like, trying to convince myself that I didn't deserve to be there. Sort of like, it was kind of like a shitty self-sabotage, I guess, in a way. Whereas like, if I'd maybe, you know, hindsight, you know, you're like, oh shit, should have done that. You know? But yeah, at the time, like, it was just felt like I couldn't perform the way that someone on that team deserved, kind of thing. And it really burnt me out, like, by the end of the season. And I wish that I'd been able to kind of deal with it differently. But like, at the time, I just like didn't know how to. Like, no one teaches you that, you know. Whereas like someone like Finn has been on that team since before he was a junior.
Yeah.
So, you know, like he's used to the environment, and like, I mean, Finn's obviously like a great, you know, like he's been amazing since he was like 10. But when you don't have that, you don't know how to be that, you know?
Especially when you've gone from 10 years of being a privateer and literally fighting for your next meal or your next ride. Like, if you don't ride when you're injured, then you're not going to get to the next race. Type of thing, right?
Yeah, and it was like one of those things where you're like, for the past 10 years, I've pretty much been told that I'm not good enough to be on a team. But then now all of a sudden I'm on like the best team. And then you're like, well, what changed? You know, like I haven't changed that much. Like, why am I all of a sudden here? So it was like, it was a weird adjustment. But now looking back, there's a lot of things I regret that I personally didn't do, but it was still like the best experience I've ever had. And Laurent, like as a manager, is like really admirable. Like he's someone I really look up to, and I'm really impressed with like his business and how he manages things.
Yeah, that team looks so dialed, and everyone seems to be looked after in the right way to keep them at their peak performance. Like it is really cool to see.
Yeah, a really cool dynamic with everyone.
It seems kind of crazy that, like, I guess in my experience of the sport, everyone's super supportive, but to have people telling you that you're not good enough for a team, like, I don't see how that's beneficial for anyone. Were people literally telling you that, or is that something you kind of derived?
It was kind of just like the way the industry was.
Yeah.
You know, I think in the past maybe 5 years, the industry has progressed considerably. You know, like you look at all these teams, and there's a ton of women on teams now. And whereas before, when I was coming up, that was like really rare. You know, the top 3 had a team, and then, you know, even Claire Bouchard, who's like, you know, like amazing rider and racer, she was on a team, but you know, like she was possibly paying her way and like things like that. You know, like it was never like a factory thing, and it was just always like, oh, you know, it was, you just get used to settling into like a position that you've been told is like you're like, okay, I can get free product, and I can get this support at the race. Like SRAM has always been like probably my number one supporter throughout my whole career, and like there's no way that I could have got, you know, half the way I have without them. You know, they were always there for me at the races. And they tried for a long time to try and put something together, and it just like never, you know, because it's not just like you, it's like all these moving pieces. You know, it's like a game, and so it just never really worked out. But they always pushed to support me and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. You just like, you get told, no, there's no budget, there's no room, there's no this, there's no that, and you know, so then you kind of just settle into, you're like, okay, this is how I go, this is how I race. And then, and it's not really a bad thing, but it's taught me a lot. But you know, it would be sick if I'd been able to like advance throughout those like 10 years, you know, or like you know, 7 8 years, instead of just kind of reach one level and just stayed there, kind of thing.
But it's got to give you a certain skill or certain I guess strength and resilience towards like everything else that's kind of happening, like injuries and stuff like that, if you can get through not having that support and having to race at a top level without it.
Yeah, for sure. It's taught me a ton of things, like as far as injury management, even just like how to look after yourself on traveling and how to budget, you know, like you're like, okay, I've got X number of dollars and these are the races I want to go to.
Yeah.
You know,
and get as much out of $1 as you possibly can. And I guess like while we're talking about that kind of sponsorship and you being the privateer aspect, there was one quote out of that Vital episode that I heard that completely like blew my mind and infuriated me. It was like when you said that someone literally told you that if you didn't dress more like a woman or something, like you wouldn't get anywhere in the sport.
Yeah.
Like, how did you not punch them in the face or like get real angry at that? Or was there? How'd you find?
Yeah, I was like 16 when they said that,
Yeah,
and I've always I've always kind of been like a bit of like a tomboy, a bit like, all my friends were boys. I don't know. I've always just been me. Like, and I don't think I've ever been penalized for that. Like growing up, like some people are bullied, like I've always been surrounded by a bunch of really cool people. I've always had great friends. I've never felt like at all, like I know that I'm different and I'm like weird, or I got like gap teeth and I'm, bit weird or whatever, but I've never been penalized for it. So I've always been like just comfortable being myself. And so when they're like, yeah, like if you don't start, like wearing your hair down more, or like, I think that was one of the examples he used, or wearing like tighter clothes, and you're really not going to get sponsored. And I was just like, oh, that sucks. But like at the time I was like, I can't do that. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like, that sounds impossible for me, you know? So I was like, it's not even an option, I can only be kind of myself. And I think because I had like, just like because I was never penalized for being myself, I just like didn't know how to be anyone different. And so that was kind of like, at the time I was just like, okay, I guess that's just how it is, And I remember being told by some of the other pro, I think it was like Sabrina or someone, when I was like really young, it was like I was still junior, and she was like, yeah, like you should start wearing like mascara when you ride, because like it makes your eyes look better, like through your goggles, like in photographs and stuff. And I was just like, I'm not doing that. Like I'm trying to ride down this track. I don't care what my eyes look like in a photograph. And like, but they're operating maybe on a bit of a different level than I was, because they had already kind of made it to the people were already paying attention to them and stuff like that. Whereas I was just trying to survive,
I can't even think of a time I've looked at like a photo of someone riding and looked at their eyes through the goggles. Yeah. I'm more blown away by the line they're riding, or their style on the bike. But that's crazy.
But I think that's just like a cool example of like how it was when I was like what kind of the dialogue was when I was growing up. And this would be like 2007. I was 2007, 2008. Those are my junior years. So that was like kind of the era that I was being told these things. Whereas like now, like I hope no one's being told those things. But for example, like you said, you've never even thought about looking at someone's eyelashes. Yeah.
It's, I guess, a couple of things. Like for me is one, like I kind of love our sport because of the diversity we have within the women's field. Like you've got Tani Seagrave, you've got yourself, you've got Rachel Atherton, you've got, all the French ladies as well. Like everyone's kind of different with their style and their fashion and what they wear on the bike, and it's all seems so inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of things,
I feel like sorry.
on the other side of things, it's more admirable and something more for me, and something I think other people should look up to, is the fact that you just want to be yourself. Like that's more marketable and more kind of impressive than trying to conform to the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think mountain biking has a pretty cool base. Like a lot of the athletes are very authentic and like very strong personalities, that they're it's an individual sport, and I feel like people are comfortable with being that individual, and it's cool across the whole field, like every discipline, like everyone they kind of have their thing, and I feel like the ones that embrace it are able to kind of reap the rewards.
Yeah, for sure. Were there any kind of like role models, male or female, or something that you looked up to while you were being a privateer, or while you were trying to take that next step? Like, were there any personalities that really kind of shone out to you?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, like I always looked up to like Claire Bouchard. She was kind of like the local female that was like a really strong racer, really like she's still like an amazing rider, like just like the perfect style on the bike and everything. And she was always very like willing to help and very honest. And so I always really liked kind of seeing what she was doing, but that was still like at a level, it was like at a level I could relate to. which I think was important because, you know, I'd look at like Rachel Atherton or someone and it was just like, she was like in a different world, you know, like I couldn't really relate to that. And then probably Stevie was just the biggest one because we were the same age, we were friends, and we're very similar, kind of like, you know, we're both from small towns and we're both, you know, like community really helped us get to where we were, but he was able to take it so much further. And it was just really inspiring to us to be like, you know, you see him and you're like, personality wise, we're different. And, you know, he definitely had that special thing, but like we were still similar enough that you're like, oh, like I could maybe do that too one day, you know, like he was definitely like the hero that was still like your friend. And that was, I think that was really important for myself as well as like a bunch of other, you know, like my boyfriend Remy, Mark Wallace, like it was all really relatable, but like you're like, see what he could achieve and what he achieved, and you're like, oh, like, you know, like, he's crazy, but you know, I could do it too.
He again was like a different attitude and stuff, but I guess like until him there was no real Canadian scene on the World Cup series at all, and then after he made that boom, it seemed like you guys really had that driving force for you guys to kind of have that pathway into the World Cup. Like, yeah,
for sure. There was like, I think there's just too big of a gap. Like I think there was like some older, like before our time kind of guys, like the Dustin Adams and like those kind of guys who like, I know Dustin now, but like at the time it was just a name. You know, you're like, oh yeah, Canada used to have a fast guy, but like you don't even know like when that was. And then like Tyler Moreland was really fast too, but like he never took it as far as like Stevie did. But like growing up, he was still like the cool guy kind of, and you're like, oh, like that guy's cool. But then Stevie was the one that took it all the way, you know, and he was always pushing us to keep pushing as well. Like it was never like, I felt like he did the best job at showing us how to be like, how to cheer for each other. Like all the time growing up, it felt like there was only, especially with women, there's only so much room at the top, you know?
Yeah.
You know, there's only room for like 2 Canadians to have a factory ride or something, you know, whereas, and he did a really good job at like getting everyone to like push each other to get to the top kind of thing.
Yeah, right. I've never heard that about him. That's really cool.
Yeah.
What was, I guess like it was a big shock, but how much of a hole did him passing away leave in your kind of riding and your lifestyle and everything like that? Like, how did you kind of deal with that and keep moving on? Like, if he was such a big influence.
It was, I mean, it still feels crazy, you know, like it still doesn't feel real. And that, like I've before we lost Stevie, I'd lost one of my best friends in high school. And so I was like, it was a similar kind of experience. And you never get over it or anything, but you learn to kind of try and figure out what it is about them that you want to keep, you know, you want to keep living on kind of thing. And yes, I don't know. It's definitely been hard. The year after, or the year that Stevie passed, it was really, really challenging race year. I actually did really well. That was 2016, so that was the year before I signed to Specialized. And I remember at Leogang World Cup, it was the first race back since he had passed away, and I got 3rd, and it was my best ever World Cup result. And it was like, it was such a trip. Like everyone was like, oh, like so hyped, and like they're like, why aren't you like stoked and stuff? And I was like, it was so disappointing to me that he didn't get to see me get 3rd. Like I was like, that was my best ever result. Like why couldn't I have done that when he was there to be like pumped for me, you know? And like the year before, like because you know how proud he would have been and like how happy. Because I was like what I was saying, like he was so stoked for everyone to like push each other and like go forward. And so like that was like such a weird experience for me. Like it should have been one of the best days, but it was like, even to this day, when I look back on it, like it wasn't a good day. Like it was like, yeah, it was really weird. And you didn't really know how to like like at the time people were like filming you and they're like, oh, like you're like be more stoked and like, fuck, like, you know, but like it's like not really something you want to talk about at the time or anything. Like you're just trying to like figure it out yourself, and you're like, why aren't I happy? And then you're trying to figure out. So it was a really, really hard year. So like I felt like I was riding with like something to prove, but I was like trying to like almost prove it to him, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
which is that's brutal.
Which is like you can't maintain that. Like it actually kind of worked for me, but like you then can't keep that going.
You'd be burnt out. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of brutal, but it's also kind of cool that he had that effect on you and like he had an effect on so many people in that way. Like I think even Chappelle mentioned something about it. Like he just had that.
Yeah, we just had our Canadian national championship like a couple weeks ago, and it was really nice. So Stevie's mom drove out in her RV to watch the race, and it was super cool. Everyone was just like, yeah, it was really nice. Everyone was so stoked to see her, and she got to watch the race, and she, you know, because there's like the legacy fund and stuff. So it was really special and really cool, and we got her to do a keg stand at the end.
That's so good.
Yeah, she's like, man. They had like funnels and stuff. They're like, okay, we can like set up like a funnel, and she's like, no, I want to do a proper one. And they're like, all right, like proper. We're like, man, Stevie would be pumped.
She's definitely the most famous like downhill mum in the world by far.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So good. And I guess like over COVID times, you started the MGM channel, and I noticed in that, like one of the points I was going to bring up that before I even thought about Stevie, but like you guys have that same attitude of all living together, but all pushing each other towards that common goal of being better. Like has living in that house and being with those guys and riding together, has that really pushed you more and more over the years?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Jesse actually doesn't live here.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
He lives just down the street though.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it does, like it's a really cool. I think the three of us are a good combination. Because before we kind of kicked it off, I was like, Remy, like we should just start a YouTube channel. Like, you know, like it's gonna be a thing. Like YouTube's gonna be a thing that eventually I feel like people are gonna have to kind of do, you know. Why don't we just start one? And then we tried, and it was just like us like bickering for like, for like half an hour, you know. And I was like, I don't think this is gonna work. But like individually, I wasn't gonna do it on my own. And Remy had kind of started, but like he couldn't be consistent with it. You know, it's like really hard when you're doing it alone. And then we're like, okay, I think we need a third person. Okay. And we're like, talking with Jesse, and we're like, Jesse's perfect because I think we all kind of like the same things and want the same things, but we're all pretty different set of strengths and stuff. Okay. And so it's been really cool to like Jesse, I think is very like, I mean, he's like the engineer, you know, he's very like very analytical and like kind of has some crazy thoughts that aren't like bad. They're just like, you're like, oh shit, I didn't think to do that, you know. And then Remy has like a very like powerful style on the bike, and like he's done a really good job at transitioning from downhill to enduro, whereas I feel like I've struggled in that transition. And then Jesse has been like an enduro lord since he was like he came from Mexico. He's been racing enduro forever, you know. So like he's very like special set of skills that way. So I think it's a pretty good good combo. And I think all three of us kind of like complement each other, and even just like I did that comfort zone thing where I was like, you know, I was just like sick of feeling like I couldn't do things when I knew that I could do them. And I was like, well, this is just me telling myself I can't do these things. So why don't I just shut up and do something? You know? Yeah. And I was like, I've always wanted to like hit Brutus. And so that was really cool for me to have them even just being there and like knowing why I wanted to do it and knowing how I do things, like they know I'm not like a reckless rider. Like I'm very calculated. I'm like a bit reserved in that way.
Yeah.
Obvious because I've been injured so many times, but they know how I like to, like, especially Remy knows how, you know, if he's going to get me to hit a feature, he kind of knows how he's going to have to get me to do it, you know? And then even just me doing that kind of inspired Jesse to then be like, all right, you know what? I've always wanted to do this drop of Remy Metalliers, but like, one, I've never wanted to admit that I'm scared of it. And then two, I'm scared of it.
I mean, like, everyone's scared of that thing. I'm not going even walking that thing. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That first like video of you hitting Brutus and that build up though was like some of the best content I've seen about progression on a bike ever.
Oh really? Yeah, cool.
Because I guess like a lot of people just want to hit that big hit and like that's all they're focused on. No one really kind of builds up to it and did what you guys kind of did and analyze how step by step they can get to that Brutus, like to get to that big challenge. Like it was really cool to watch your process on that. Is that how you approach everything?
Yeah, I wanted to do it kind of that way because like I was saying when at the end of 2018 when I kind of swapped from downhill to enduro, I was really burnt out. And part of that burnout was being at downhill World Cups and not being like mentally prepared for them because of injury. You feel like you don't feel like you're ready for them. But I was forcing myself to take these risks, and it played like a huge role on like just how I felt like at the end of the season. I was just so burnt out, and it was like this deep fatigue that's like way different. It was like my adrenal system pretty much. Like I was just so like over forcing myself to take risks. And then so like quite a bit of time had passed since then, and then I found myself like kind of being bored and being like, oh yeah, right. Like I'm ready to like take risks again and push myself, and like because enduro like it's risky, but it's not that risky. Like you're going fast, but you're not doing certain, like for me I guess, because like jumps and drops are probably like what I like struggle with mentally. Like skill wise I know I'm perfectly capable, but it's just like a bit of a mental hurdle. And so that I was like, oh, I feel like I want to do something exciting, you know? Yeah. And so but then I knew that I wanted to do it in a way that would promote me to keep doing them, you know, not just forcing myself to go and do it like I was at a race, you know, where you're like, well, I don't have a choice. Like, you know, like either I hit it or I'm like 20 seconds back, you know, like, and you just don't really have a choice. And so you like force yourself to get to this spot mentally to take a risk like that. And it's like kind of gnarly, no matter what the feature is. So yeah, part of that comfort zone thing was just trying to like teach myself to take risks again and do it in a way that I'm like stoked to keep trying to take risks.
Yeah, and I guess like we saw the downfalls of that at the last World Cup with that massive road gap they had in there. Like you could tell that some people are just not used to building up and taking that risk and don't put themselves in that spot enough. Like that would have been cool to see you hit that thing. That's for sure.
That thing, like, it was funny going to Leger. Actually, I was like so stoked, and then I hadn't ridden my downhill bike, and I just showed up, and I was like, oh man, I'm not ready to race a World Cup. Probably should have done a few more days on the downhill bike, but it was really cool. I loved that experience because it was like, one, you shouldn't be able to show up to a World Cup and qualify. And then two, seeing the level of those top women now, like Pom Pom, blew me away. Like I was on the side of the track it was like first practice run. It's like 8:30 in the morning, and she was so aggressive and like so focused. I was like, holy shit, like that. And I've never seen her like that, you know, like we're the same age and we've raced kind of like alongside each other for years, and I've never seen her ride like that before. And I was just like, yes, this is sick. Like instantly, like, you know, like the fangirl kicked in, and I was like, oh, this race is gonna be awesome, forgetting that I was supposed to be in it. And like
yeah.
And yeah, that road gap, I think they'll have to change it for world champs next year, because I think world champs, you kind of have to be a little more mindful of like who's racing. But it didn't need to be quite as gnarly as it was. It could still be blind, it could still be anything, but like I feel like they should just move the corner back a little bit, because you literally had to go off a blind road gap and land like in a berm. That's where you see like Marine, you know, it's blind, so you're not like totally sure, and then you don't land in the right spot, you're missing the corner kind of thing. So it was like very exact and very technical. For the women, at least, I think, like just to try and carry that speed into the flat. It was a flat turn going in, blind, had to land in like a pretty small area. And then they didn't even put it on TV. So you're kind of like, well.
yeah, exactly.
You're like, why did like it doesn't need to be that gnarly then if you're not showing it off.
Yeah, exactly. But that, I think, like seeing few like crashes and a few footage, like that flat corner before the drop tend to send people to the rider's right, and people were missing the landing completely.
Where you didn't want to go.
Yeah. No. But like, as I'm saying, like you being able to build up to those bigger drops and work out how to attack that thing step by step. If other people had done that, perhaps they would have been fine. Like, instead of just getting, I guess, at a World Cup, so you got to do it. Like, it's got to be insane. I mean, when you see Kate Edwards like standing at the top of the drop, thinking about it, you know it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah. Exactly.
You mentioned it just then as well, but like, is it hard being a fan and just wanting to watch the racing and watch everyone kill it and then racing yourself? Do you ever get lost in that, the fan side of things?
I feel like at downhill World Cups, I'm like, it's weird. Downhill has this like, you know, if there wasn't tape on the side of that track, I'd be probably laughing it all day. You put tape up and call it a World Cup, and it like freaks the shit out of me. I'd like to do more downhill racing again, just to like be able to get myself back into a mindset of having to perform and learn a track so quickly. I think it's like a really unique and cool skill. And I don't know if that's like unrealistic for me to think that I can go back at this point, but it is something really special that I want to keep. I would like to keep exploring, I guess. But no matter what race it is, I usually always wish I'm racing. So, you know, like I didn't qualify in Leger, and that was okay. Like I said, I think it's good that I didn't qualify. You can't just show up and qualify now, especially with only 15 women, and it's cool that how tight it is. But then, like, watching the race, you're like, fuck, I wish I was racing. You know? And it's funny because, like, you're so nervous. You're at the top, and you're like, I hate this. Like, I don't want to qualify. Like, fuck. I don't, like, you know, you're trying to, you, like, get such a, like, a defense mechanism to, like, when you're that scared or, like, that nervous, to be like, oh, like, whatever. Like, you know, like, but, like, you do care. And so you have to, like, tap into that part. Like, okay, I do care. This is what I'm going to do to make it happen. But it's so easy just to be like, no, I don't care. I don't even care. Yeah. Whatever. And then you don't qualify, and you're like, oh, wow, I care a lot. But just because you're, like, afraid. So it's, like, it's just, like, easier to act like you don't care.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The whole I don't give a fuck attitude, and then you find out years later that you actually did give a fuck, and you probably should have tried.
Yeah.
But we were talking before about how, like, you're a bit of a goof, and, like, you mess around, and you're a bit out of the mold for most people. But is there, like, you seem to find this switch when you're racing to go on to ride fast and be serious on that side of things? Has that taken a while to develop, or is it literally that race tape on the side of the track that helps you kind of switch mindsets?
I feel like, no, I don't even think it's like a race thing. I feel like For me, like why I love racing and why I love mountain biking is like speed. Like, you know, there's like kind of one thing that people probably really like love about their sport or whatever. And like, you know, maybe some people it's like the act of like getting air or like hitting a turn. But for me, it's like it's like, you know, when you're like bombing down a fire road and you're like going like so fast, like just that motion of speed is like something that I really love. And like that I think is what I crave when it comes to racing. And so I feel like anytime I go ride and I can like, I find myself even like in the bike park, it turns into like I just want to ride the same trail over and over again. So I can go a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And so I don't know, racing. I don't think racing brings it out of me. I think it's just trying to find that feeling. And so racing is obviously the easiest way to do it because you got to try and go fast. But I feel like anytime that I like go for a ride, it's always, you know, even if you're like, yeah, I'm just going to like chill or whatever, you like get one little taste of it and then you're okay, like maybe I can do it here, you know, like, I think just riding, and that's like, I feel like what keeps me coming back.
Yeah, that's sick. Yeah, I definitely love that feeling of just holding off that brakes for that extra second or pumping through. And then unfortunately for me, it just ends up me in my head, but I do. I completely understand where you're coming from for that.
And like one of my favorite things, like watching downhill World Cup, like I think probably Bruni is the coolest guy to watch for this. Is like you watch all the spots where they literally take their fingers off their brakes, so that you know that they can't like do a little cheater, because like a lot of the time you'll drag the brakes a little bit even though you don't think you are. And so it's really cool, like watching Bruni. You'll see him like go off a jump, land, and then fingers off the brakes, and then he'll come into section, fingers are back on the brakes. And I try and do that a little bit of enduro, but like enduro, you're never like, if there's like a section, I was like, oh, fingers off the brakes, you know, like that is like something cool, but like you don't get to do it as much in enduro as you do in downhill, just because of the nature of the tracks and stuff. But just the act of taking your fingers off the brakes is like, that's like what I think is like, that's like the special thing, or like that feeling is really cool.
Oh, for sure. Like just death gripping. Yeah. Scariest thing in the world, but the best feeling.
Yeah.
What was some of the like lessons that you learned from Bruni that kind of stuck with you over time? Because his racecraft is second to none, in my opinion.
Yeah, honestly, Bruni is crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
So like he's just so good. And I don't know if like there's a lot of things I admire about him. I think if they're like very hard things to then like try and kind of reflect in yourself, but I definitely, his ability to like be kind of like goofing off, you know, you're hanging out and then he's like, oh, like time to practice, and then it's boom, and he's like very focused, and he has like the best ability I think out of anyone, maybe because he does so much testing, is to do just consistent runs. Like he can go and do a run of one track and he'll do the same, like almost the same time, you know, like he can replicate his movements so well. And I think that's really beneficial for training and for practice. And I think that's sort of just the amount of focus he's able to have, and just like being able to be present in those moments to just like keep doing the same thing over and over again, and then kind of check out at the end of the day, and then, you know, you know, like just switch mindset. I think that that's really cool, and it shows in his racing the way he's able to kind of just shut other things out and focus on, you know, that world champs run or whatever it is, you know. And it's a pretty amazing skill, and it's really quite admirable. I don't know if I can then replicate it, but it's definitely something to like strive for, or like,
I don't think there's many people that, like, I know for myself when I was racing bikes, and even though I wasn't like at the top end, but like you'd still spend the Saturday night like laying in bed just visualizing your run, and you'd end up being up till 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't do anything the next day because you've been up all night visualizing. That ability to switch off is more important than most people think.
Yeah. And one thing too, I guess maybe I do, is like when I'm getting sloppy on my bike, like I'm like, maybe I'm getting tired. I like think I'm like, be like Bruni. And then all of a sudden I get like strong legs and like strong hips. You know, I remember that I have them and I actually engage them and use them.
Yeah.
And like, that's like so important. Cause like a lot of time you're like, oh, like my arms, but you realize like your arms are tired. It's cause like, you're just like not using your legs.
Yeah.
When you're riding, you know, so you're putting all your weight on your arms and you're like, oh, be more like Bruni and like engage your butt and your legs. And then all of a sudden you're like in a strong riding position and you're like, oh yeah.
There you go. The number one tip to get faster for everyone out there is just be like Bruni.
Yeah. Easy. Use the legs and the butt when you ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I definitely think that's a thing that's happening, is especially with like slacker head angles. We can go deep in a rabbit hole here, but a lot of people are on their front too much and they're using their arms, whereas you get long and
get beat up.
Yeah. You feel wrecked on the front end, like your front end, and it's you're not driving through your legs. Bruni is also very like technically like he takes a lot of detail from his bike. Jesse is also the same, like Mellibed. I think Remy's very similar. And it also seems like even though you've got that relaxed attitude and stuff, again, off the bike, but do you pay much attention to the settings on your bike? Like, are you quite picky with how the bike rides?
Yeah, I'm probably like the worst out of all of them because I feel like Specialized was like just like you go to Specialized and you get to do all this testing and you're like, oh, this is the sickest thing ever. Like we'd do these training camps with Owen and it was honestly so sick. Like Owens would have all these different shocks with different tunes and you wouldn't, you know, and all you got to do was just hammer runs and try and figure out, you'd be like, oh, like the bike feels like this, the bike feels like that. And that was honestly like probably my favorite part. Like we'd be in Queenstown and we'd do like 13 lap days and we would test like 5 different shocks. And like, it was just so sick. And I was like, oh, this is like the best. But now I don't have those resources, but I still want to do that. The past 3 days, I've done 3 days, not in a row, but with motion instruments with like 3 different shocks to try and like figure things out. And I feel like at this point, I admire people that just shut up and ride their bikes. Like I feel like I'm like a little lost right now, like with my setup, but I do really enjoy it. And whether I make mistakes and then I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, like afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of the time, you know, I want to race with this shock because it's like new and I want to try it. But then afterwards, you're like, I knew that wasn't the right call. I should have just, you know, put the base setup on and done it, you know. But like at the time, you're like, well, what if it's like really good?
Yeah.
And so I think I need to separate all this fiddling I do with my racing, because a lot of the time it just like flows into the race and I'm like raising my bars, lowering my bars, putting a different shock on, being like, maybe if I bumped my fork to 180, it would change this. And then, you know, whereas like other people run the same thing all year and they beat me. So, you know, like, but I do really enjoy it. And I think it's I feel like while I still have the opportunity to do it, you know, like while I still have access to 2 different models of wheels or whatever, I want to see if I can tell the difference, you know. It's definitely like a privilege, so I want to take full advantage of it while I can. And I love things like that. And I think it all maybe came from way back in the day when I was like a junior and I was riding Kenda tires so I could get them for free. And I always just said I would never know the difference between a tire. And then I put on a Maxxis tire one day and I was like, holy shit. And it like blew my mind. This was like in 2006 or 2007, like I was young. And I was like, oh, I did notice the difference. And then I was kind of like, oh, like maybe I do know what I like. So then it's just been, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's so good. Especially that I didn't want to badmouth Canada or anything because they make some good tires now. But yeah, back in
it was
those
a long
days,
time ago.
back,
it was like a blue groove or like whatever it was called. It wasn't even like their good tire. It was like their cheap one or whatever. And so.
What's like the one part that you kind of are super picky on? Is there one thing that you really focus in on? Like it sounds like your rear shock is quite important, but what's one thing that
probably just the balance of my bike? Like how, and I mean, obviously you have to kind of change that a little bit for the track that you ride, but I like certain characteristics of like how I can kind of push in with my legs and like where my fork sits and stuff. And so when you go to new places, you kind of have to adjust things to have those feelings. But I feel like that's probably like the one thing that I'm always trying to like fine tune or like and if it's all wrong, then I feel like I can't ride, you know?
Yeah. So it's more about keeping your body position in the right spot than the bike itself. Yeah, right.
I want to be in a position where I feel like I can like use my legs. I can like drive my legs, and a lot of that comes from how I set up my rear shock or have my fork. So
yeah, I definitely think that's like very undersold in the industry. It's like everyone wants their bike to ride perfect, so they get their bike set up, but their body position is jacked. And you can't get that balance.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's like I'm not a super technical person. I think I'm like I'm more of a creative person, or I'm like, but I know what I like feeling wise. But like for me to explain if that is like coming from high speed or low speed compression, like that, I don't know. So I can like translate my feelings well, but then it's hard for me to like make that into a change. I'm like, oh, was that compression or was that rebound? I actually don't know, because it's hard to pinpoint all that.
Oh yeah,
you're ripping down a trail.
I'd be impressed if anyone that's hitting things at 40k an hour and they're hitting 1,000 bumps and their mind is processing, oh, my rebound was too slow back there. Like that's impressive. Like I don't think there's many people that can do it.
How do you know it's rebound, not compression?
yeah, that's why you mentioned you've got the motion instruments stuff there now. Like you're using that data acquisition. Has that really improved that side of things for you?
Well, I just started, and it's so much information, and I'm not like the best like data person, so I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh shit. But the motion instruments guys were really helpful to give me kind of like key points of what to focus on. And then that system is actually Fluid Function, which is a business here in town, which is like the Rock Shop service center. They look after me really well, and I'm good friends with them. So that's actually their motion instruments, and I stole it from them. But then I can take that data that I record and then go back to them and say, okay, this is what's happening. This is how my bike is riding. This is what I'm feeling, and then we can work on tunes and stuff from there. So I'm in a position where I'm really lucky because I have people help me interpret the data but if this was just me, like I would not know what to do with all the information.
I remember I got to see the data that Peltari got from Troy's bike once, and I just blew my mind. I'm like, I don't need that. Looks like some sort of Salvatore Dali. You can have that.
Dots and like.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he was just like, oh, just focus on getting like in motion instruments guys. They definitely have like a philosophy that they follow. So it's kind of like they're like pretty, very open rebound, and they're like, oh, you should try and get numbers like around here. And so that was really interesting because I found it was like you would set your shock to what you would think. You're like, okay, this is like this feels good, like this rebound speed. and then the numbers wouldn't be close to what they recommend. So you're like, okay, I'll open it 2 clicks, and then you're like, oh, that didn't feel very good, but like the numbers still weren't there. So you'd go like 2 more clicks, and you're like, oh wow, that feels good. But like there's like that in between phase where you're just like, oh no, I don't like this. But then you go a couple more clicks, you're like, holy, I really like this.
Yeah.
So that was cool because without that, I don't know if I would have gone those extra clicks, right? I would have tried the 2 clicks, like, oh no, I didn't feel good, and go back to like what I thought was good. But that kind of like showed you like, no, the number's still, it's not moving that fast yet. So that was kind of like a cool learning thing for me.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to make those huge, drastic things.
And
again, because 2 clicks is not much. Like you can.
Yeah.
Like, but while we're talking kind of about bike setup and everything, like you've been with Specialized. You were with Specialized for like 8 years or something like that. Crazy long time.
I think 2013 to 2018. That's 5 years.
5 years, and then
and I was Santa Cruz. I was 2009 to 2013. I was with Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And then Specialized 2013 to 2018, and then now Kona.
Yeah.
2018 up now.
And the Specialized bike is obviously very race orientated. How was it kind of jumping to the Kona, which is a little bit more kind of, I guess, fun? And I mean, they are race orientated bikes, but they're not to the same level as Specialized.
Well, because when I went to Kona, I also swapped to enduro. So I think that kind of like the bikes were fun. That's all I cared about, you know, like I feel like trail bikes and downhill bikes are like so different that way. Like when you're racing downhill, like you're looking for this perfect machine. And I mean, the Kona downhill bike is good, but it's not that race bike, you know, like it could be, but it's like, you know, it's like the speed at which downhill bikes are being developed now. It's like, come on, like, you know, like Specialized probably has a new link that they didn't have like 3 weeks ago, or like Canyon has, you know, like you just like, that's like, it's like a whole new world. Whereas like trail bikes, you're like, is it fun? You're like, all right, sign me up. So Kona makes a really fun bike. So it was like, it was pretty easy, to be honest. And I was going back to SRAM with that move because I'd been on Öhlins for those 2 years. So the Öhlins is really cool company. It's like I like the guys at Öhlins. I would call them good friends now, and they make a really cool product. But I'd been on RockShox for so long that it wasn't like it was easy. I just like went back to my lyric, you know, and I was like, oh yeah, it was like I never left. So it was pretty easy.
Yeah, you can pick up any RockShox product and it will be very similar to the last one. Like they're very comfortable, whereas Öhlins is it's a different system altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
But you would have been working with like TJ and stuff at Öhlins.
Yeah.
Was it TJ? Yeah. So
TJ was actually kind of how I got onto Specialized.
Okay.
How I got onto that program.
Yeah,
because Troy and they were talking, maybe Troy and Luca, like they were supposed to stay after Val di Sole World Champs. They were supposed to stay and do suspension testing. But then Troy was like, nah, I'm out. He went to Canyon. Luca went to Syndicate. And so they had all these like custom tuned shocks for like Troy and stuff, like with his name on it, but they had no rider. And I was at World Champs, and they were like, and TJ and the global marketing manager at the time, Dan Hugo, they were just like, well, TJ's like, what about that like Miranda girl? She seems pretty cool. And so at the time I was like, because I pit with SRAM, and so like Dan from Specialized, he came over and he was like, how would you feel about like staying and doing like suspension testing with Öhlins? And I was just like, oh, what? I was like kind of drunk. It was like after the race. I was like, oh, like, I don't know, like 1 second. And so like I went and talked to John Dawson because I was like, I felt like bad almost. I was like, oh, I don't know these guys, but like that sounds sick. And so I went and talked to Dawson, and he was just like, yeah, like do whatever you need to do, you know. He's like, but don't sign anything. He's like, talk to me first. And so it was sick, like especially so Dan was like, all right, like don't worry about anything, like we got you sorted. Because I was like, fuck, I gotta like change my flight, like
yeah,
you know, I was there with the Canadian national team because it was a world champ. And he was like, no, like we'll just take care of everything. And then so I just stayed and did suspension testing with Loic and Finn and the Owens guys. And it was crazy because like it was a really weird, I didn't really know it, but I walked into like, you know, because like Loris had just left. And so it was like kind of weird. Like, and so then like Finn's mechanic, Kevin, who ended up being my mechanic as well. He had left because like he didn't know if he was still going to be like working with the team.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like I didn't know any of it. I just like rolled in and I was just like, all right, let's do this. And we did like 100 laps of Val Sol.
That sounds heaps fun.
The next couple days, and we're all terribly hungover the first day, and but, you know, we cracked on, and I guess they liked me enough to sign me. So I owe TJ and Dan Hugo a lot actually for kind of right. I don't know, getting me on that team.
TJ is a legend. For those that don't know, he's done a lot. Which I still need to get him on here, but yeah, he has done a lot in his life. Was it
very cool?
Was it hard? Like, I mean, you went back to RockShox after the Öhlins thing, which I guess Öhlins had that kind of more custom, more tuning, more factory feel to it. And then, what's RockShox like as like a supporting for your tuning and everything like that? Like, do they give you much support at the races? Because we don't seem to see much of them on the socials.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very special relationship maybe with RockShox with Fluid Function being in town. So like all winter, if there's something I want to try, I can try it, you know, and they're insane that way. And then at the races, same thing. Like they're not like advertising it as much, or you know, maybe they're not as like, you know, like Owens. Everyone knows that, you know, like especially Gravity has custom springs and stuff like that. You know, maybe it's not quite like that, but like if you need something, like boom, like, you know, Evan is there. He will help you do it. And yeah, it's always been, I don't know if it's, maybe I've just been around so long that like I know just to barge in there and ask or what. But I feel like they're always down to help and, you know, try new things. And I think they're just like, yeah, they just do their thing and they're not quite as maybe out there. I don't know.
Don't need to do it, maybe. Not,
yeah.
What I guess we're talking about like your team managers, mechanics and stuff like that. You've moved to the Kona team, which means you're with Dupel, who's one of the most like underspoken people in the world. What's it like going to that team? Like it seems to be a whole different vibe to every other team that is on the circuit.
Yeah, it's pretty low key. And I've known Dupel since like, I don't know, since I was like 16, 17, you know?
Yeah, wow.
Like so long. And so like, it's like, you know, like I went to Specialized and like Laurent was the manager and, you know, I was like, you know, it's all about respect and it's like, you know, whereas Dupel, you're kind of just like, shut up, Dupel. You know, you're way more like bros and like friends. And so it's like pretty laid back. It's chill. Yeah, it's been pretty cool. They're like, what races do you want to do? And I wanted to kind of take a stab at EWS, and I think Connor was pretty keen as well. So yeah, it's easy. It's laid back. It's just some buds. Yeah.
What's it been like riding with Connor? Probably again like a very chill guy, but lets his riding do his talking.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. The last trip we went on, it was really cool to kind of get to know Connor. Because, like, honestly, I felt like I didn't really know Connor. Like, we've always been around, but you're like, I don't actually, like, know you. And so the last, like, 4 or 5 weeks we did, it was really fun. And it kind of, like, I figured him out a little bit more. And I feel like I'm maybe way more like in your face, or you know, I'm like a bit like, I feel like I'm just like grilling people sometimes, you know, like playing like 21 questions or something. Like what's you know, because I want to like get to know them, whereas like Connor's just way more reserved and kind of like laid back. But then once you figure out like his sense of humor and like things like that, he's a good time, and he just really, you know, I was saying I like dig myself into like a bit of a rabbit hole. Like he's just really good at knowing what he likes, and then just riding his bike. And like he is insanely good at riding bikes. It's mind blowing.
Oh yeah.
Like you don't forget, but then like you see it in person and you're like, oh yeah. Like that was crazy. Just like he's good shit.
Yeah, he's like I always kind of reference him as like that Simpsons meme of Homer just going into the bushes. Like once he's finished his race run or something, he just kind of just disappears, and then he'll come back out at the top of his race run. Like you just don't see him or hear him. But then, like you watch some of the local guys and the faster guys will come down, and you're like, yeah, they're pumped, they're fast, and then Connor will come down, and you're just like, holy shit! Like where did that come from? Have you learned much from him and his riding style and his approach to races, or do you think you're having more of an influence on him because he's started to do the YouTube thing and seems a bit more outspoken on a few things as well?
No, I don't think we're there yet in our relationship to really influence each other that much. I probably got him addicted to Donkey Kong though, so
yeah, sick.
I brought a Nintendo Switch to Europe, and we like ended up in some accommodation for like 2 weeks with no Wi-Fi or whatever. So we're just like playing Nintendo super hard. But I don't know. I feel like we're quite different in riding styles and everything. But like, I still like to know what, you know. I'm like, oh, what are you changing on your bike? You know, like, you know. But like that. But I feel like he's just he knows what he likes, and so. I think if anything, I'd probably learn from him, but I don't think I've taught him much. I probably just got him addicted to Switch. That's about it.
Life of a pro athlete is playing Switch on the side. Yeah, no, that team seems good, and it seems like the that whole vibe and the relaxed nature of it seems to kind of complement your riding and your attitude around the sport. I think it's a really mix. I was stoked to see it when you went on there. What was it like going into the EWS racing style from downhill? Like that would have been a big swap. And again, you mentioned you like the double headers. I think you're one of the only people that I've heard say that as well. Like, what is it about those you're stoked on?
I think it's because two things. Okay, so when I went into enduro, it was definitely a bit of a shock.
Yeah,
I'd done enduro with Specialized before. I'd done a few rounds, and so I kind of knew how like enduro worked or whatever. But doing a full season, it's just like you go to a downhill race, and you know that the downhill track is going to have certain characteristics that's going to make it sick. You know, like it's going to be fast. There's going to be features. There's like, it's going to flow together. You don't know any of that when you go to an enduro. You're just like, oh, we're going here. And then you show up and you're like, oh, wow, those are like the best trails. And then you go to the next place, you're like, oh, wow, those are like not trails. You know, like, so for me, it was like this crazy, like, you would go to these places and you're like, this is sick. Like, this is like enduro, like this is like trail bike riding, you know, like this is awesome. And then the next week you'd be like, oh my God, I don't know how to ride a bike. Yeah. But then, and you're just like, these trails suck. But then you see these people that are able, like Richie, who is able to win no matter what the trail is. And that's like really inspiring, because I'm very like, maybe a bit like emotional, right? Like if I'm having fun, then I'm going to try hard. I'm going to like, and then you get on these trails that you like don't know how to ride, and they're like not fun, you know, but you're like, well, it's still a race, so I still have to like try and go the best that I can. But it's almost like you don't know how to try hard on these kind of trails, because it's so like the opposite of what you're used to riding, you know, like those tight, janky, nose picky corners, like stuff that like we don't ride here. And so it was just like a big shock to me that like this is what we're racing, but like you can be good at all of it. And so I feel like enduro, I'm like, I can be better than you know, like, and I think that's why I like the double headers, is because like, yeah, the experience wasn't maybe as like exciting because you're doing the same thing, but I felt that second round I was like, well, I know where I'm going, so I can go faster. Whereas like I think just coming from downhill, that's always been hard for me, is to just kind of loosen up and ride on reaction instead of memory. And so that's been a kind of a cool journey, I guess, of trying to figure out how to do that better, and just like not care about the kind of trail you're riding and just care about the race. You know? Yeah.
That's cool.
And like it's so cool that you see these amazing riders like Jack and Isabeau and Richie, and they're just able to like, doesn't matter where they are. You know, it doesn't matter if it's pedally, it doesn't matter if it's deep and gnarly, it doesn't matter if it's wet, you know, and you're just like, that's super cool.
Yeah, especially this year, like with Richie and Jack having those battles, like it's testament to show that the sport's kind of evolving and athletes are evolving to that mindset of you just got to race it, like no matter what's in front of you. Yeah,
it's cool. It's definitely unique challenges.
Yeah, and I think that's what downhillers have kind of been looking for a while, is just getting that unique track style out there till it's given to them.
I feel like at a race though, like it's almost like a coping mechanism for athletes to complain about things. So,
it's not a mountain bike race if people aren't complaining, right?
Exactly. So it's so funny. Like, and so my thing this year was like, I don't care. I don't want any drama.
Yeah.
And I just don't care. Like, cause like people were trying to get into it about the double headers and stuff. That's like, they're like, this is an enduro. Like, we're not pedaling enough. And I was like, there's a chairlift. I want to take the chairlift. I'm not going to pedal up a road under a chairlift. Like, you know, for me, I want the focus to be on the stages, I don't care how we get there. Whereas other like diehard enduro people are like, if it's not a 2,000 meter day, it's not enduro. And that's fine. That's like what, you know, that's part of the sport that they really like, is like that physical challenge. So my thing this year is just to show up at every race. And like I said, I don't care anymore if they're bad trails or if they're good trails. It's a race. So that's the kind of mindset I've been trying to adopt for enduro this year.
It's not like they're just going to cut out the gondola or something because a couple of people are complaining either. It's not going to change anything. So it is much better mindset to just go and race there.
Yeah.
It seems like mindset and the mental aspects of riding seem to be like the hardest for you. Do you kind of have a sports psych, or do you kind of work through anything with someone around like your mental state, or is it just something you've learned to kind of train over the years like you would normal muscles?
Yeah, no, I'd say I'm like terrible. My mental game, and you know, I actually tried to find a sports psych this winter, and I contacted like 3 people, and like none of them were. They're like, oh no, like I don't do that anymore, or like, oh sorry, I'm not taking on new clients. And like I was talking to a guy after I won world champs, but it was almost like he's really, like Jesse uses him, he's a really cool guy, but it was almost like we were already friends before. So it was almost like, it's almost like you want someone that knows nothing. I kind of felt like it was like, I kind of felt like I didn't really know what to talk to him about, because it was kind of like it was too close. Like I felt like we already knew each other, you know, like it was like So you almost want like a stranger that like,
oh, for sure,
you know, that you can like have to maybe explain things to like help. I don't know. I would like to work with someone for sure. I've just honestly struggled trying to find like, because I want something like long term, and a lot of it is like, okay, well, it's $150 a session or whatever, and you're like, well, I can't do this every week, or you know, like I can't afford to do it every week, you know, like, so it's almost like trying to find like a program to do or something. So a lot of it, I think my mental game has let me down, like for the majority throughout the career, just like doubting myself and sort of what I'm capable of, or not being good at being present. I think I'm better at it now, but only through experience, you know, and like learning from things that, you know, you're like, oh, I really regret that, because literally the only thing that let me down was my mind, you know. So I have gotten better at it, but I mean, I'd still like to be better.
Oh yeah, I think it's like the number one reason for people not doing good at biking would be their mindset, and it's as simple as, I don't want to hit that jump because I don't think I can. Like simple things like that, it's all coming down to the mind. So it's definitely a huge part of the sport that gets overlooked.
Yeah, and I always like admire people that are like really confident, because I'm like, how did you get to be that way?
Yeah.
Like, how are you like so confident? Like Jesse's really good at it. Like Jesse, I feel like is very just a confident guy, and I'm just like, how are like, and it's like totally like, and like for sure, you know, it's like his upbringing, like, you know, it's just like the way his life has gone that has helped him be like that. But like sometimes you look at them and you're like, how are, like, not because like they shouldn't be, but like you're just like, damn, like that's cool. Like, but like I'm not like that. Like at least inside, I don't feel like that. Maybe he doesn't feel like that inside either, but he does a good job at
just putting it on. Yeah. Fake it till you make it type thing.
Yeah.
Cool. I might start wrapping things up a little bit, let you get on with the rest of your day. Not that there's much left over there. I usually ask a question around like advice and stuff like that, but I reached out to a junior girl here and asked if she had any questions she wanted to ask you, because she's a shredder. She's XC enduro, wants to race downhill, like really, really fast girl. And she just wanted to know what advice you'd give to junior girls trying to get known, and also getting quick on the bike in different trail types and features. So she wanted to know your advice around those two things. That's for Jess Williams.
All right, Jess. Well, I think she's on the right track for sure, like doing all those different disciplines. I think almost now more than ever, you notice that that's really paying off for people, is having like a really diverse set of skills. And I think that's one thing I wish I had done more growing up, was like ride more. Like I hated cross country, so I didn't do it. You know, like I grew up in Pemberton and Squamish, and I just rode bike park. So, you know, I think keep an open mind and push yourself in all these areas that you don't feel as strong in, you know, like get a BMX, you know, keep racing, just keep riding all types of bikes, and it'll pay off in one of those disciplines or a couple of those disciplines way more than just focusing on one will, I think. So I think keeping your skill set diverse is really key. And then that translates into getting faster on different types of terrain. You know, like if you're strong on a BMX, you're going to be able to go ride those like bermy, flowy trails, but then like you're riding gnarly shit on your XC bike, that's going to transfer over into your technical skills. Like it's really important, I think, to keep all kind of your avenues open and not be too honed in on one thing. So that's one thing that I really wish that I had done more of as like a younger kid. And, you know, I can't ride a BMX in my life, but like, but it's a really good skill. And a lot of those great cyclists and athletes, you see that in their background, is that they didn't just come from one like niche, like didn't just grow up riding downhill or whatever.
Yeah.
And then how to get noticed. I don't know. I think this one's a hard question to answer because I feel like it's like a crazy world out there. I feel like the most important thing is to be authentic. Just keep portraying your authentic self and being honest with just what you like and who you are, because then that you'll naturally gravitate to the people that you want to be around and want to be around you, and that'll help create opportunities that will last, I think. If you're, I don't know, keep being you. And I mean, I guess now to be noticed, social media is huge and stuff, but I mean, you don't have to tell a kid that.
Yeah. They'll tell us how to do it.
But I honestly just think being authentic and a respectful racer is gonna get you noticed in the right ways. Because people are always watching and people always remember, and the cycling industry is a lot smaller than you think it is, So like when you're at the event, if you're being a good person, then I think good things will happen.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely the cycling world is a lot smaller than people think. If that one time you get angry and throw your bike or do something dumb is the one thing that's going to stick with everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're at an event in Australia and SRAM Australia is there and, they notice you, then, and you are respectful and you're polite and you're just yourself, you're not putting on some sort of show and you're just authentic, then, people are going to like you. And, someone at SRAM Australia might mention it to, global SRAM.
Yeah.
And then, that's like how it works. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think building, that's a good point as well. Like taking those baby steps of shop, local team, go to nationals, talk to SRAM, and the next minute, they're talking to global, and it's not as simple as sending SRAM on Instagram message saying sponsor me.
A DM.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to be confident in human, like face-to-face interactions. I think that'll take you very far, opposed to just like, anyone can send an email and put an exclamation mark on it. But if you can't portray your passion face-to-face, then it'll be hard. And I went through all that with SRAM when I was like 16.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember Moreland being like, well, why should I sponsor you? I was like, I don't know. Like I just freaked out. I was like, oh my God, why should they? But, like being prepared to to have answers for those questions and being able to tell, like, not just write it out in an email, but, say that to their face and own it. I think those are really cool skills. Yeah.
This is a bit of a random one, but do you have any regrets or anything that you would have liked to have changed in the past and in your career up until now? Or do you think everything's kind of led to where you are?
Yeah, I think my biggest regret throughout my career is that I didn't believe that I deserved the position on Specialized Gravity. I think that is like one thing that if I could go back, I would have. It's not that it's not that I didn't enjoy my time there. Like it was honestly 2 amazing years, but I wish I had owned it more. I wish I had confidence to be like, I got this opportunity and I deserve to be here with like with the world's best riders, and I never owned that. And so that was like one thing that I wish that I could go back and change. I think that's probably the only thing. I mean, I've been hurt like a million times, but that's all kind of helped me become the person that I am, as shitty as it is. But I think that one thing is like, I wish I had owned my place on that, personally on that team, and just like believed that I deserved it.
Do you think that's kind of helped with your transition to Kona in any way? Like, deserving, knowing that you should be on that Kona team racing the EWS? Or...
Yeah, I think like after that, I realized the opportunity that I had wasted a bit. And just been like, okay, well, I don't have time to do that again.
Yeah.
You have to own all your steps throughout the way and kind of just like make sure you get the most out of them. And I mean, that's obviously hard to do day to day. You get sucked into day to day life and the small things, but like the big picture, you kind of have to, believe that what you're doing is worthwhile and that you are of value. And I think it did help.
For sure.
I still go back and change it, but
100%. Yeah. But there's no point in dwelling on it either. Like if you just keep moving on. Yeah. Last question I like to ask people, and it seems to be the hardest for some. But if you're lacking in motivation or you're having like a bad day with a mental challenge or something like that, is there any music or anything you like to like listen to amp up or get motivated or help find the right mental state to be in?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I have like two, depending on what I'm doing.
Okay.
I feel like if it's like the gym or racing, I listen to a lot of rap because it almost like makes you like it kind of like gives you some swagger and some like confidence.
Yeah.
But then if I have to go do like hard intervals, something like that, I try and like maybe it's more like electronic, like techno, where it's like almost like you're trying to match like your heart rate to like some sort of crazy like high paced music. And I feel like that, as far as music goes, is like kind of what I gravitate to. And it's always kind of gym, racing is always kind of rap, work, like intervals, sprints kind of thing, electronic.
Yeah, I definitely get you match your like cadence and your output to the beat of the song and stuff. It just helps.
And like you find like you kind of almost get caught up in it, like and you're like, almost have, like if you're on a rest, you almost have to like bring yourself back down because you can kind of get like lost in it all. Yeah.
What artists are you kind of listening to for the rap side of things?
I
specific?
I guess ASAP Ferg.
Yeah, cool.
Like that kind of ASAP Ferg. I like Jazz Cartier. I listen to him a lot. Yeah. I have actually a couple of Spotify playlists that are on the Kona account.
Yeah, sick.
You can check out a gym one and an interval trainer one. So
yeah, sick. I'm gonna have to have a look at that for sure. Definitely.
I like Dave. I don't know if you know Dave or Bugsy. Yeah.
The English grimy type of stuff.
Yeah. A little bit of grime. Yeah,
that stuff's like real. Yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. It's just aggressive and just gets you.
It kind of gets you.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
And it's a long time ago at a race. One of the coaches was saying he was watching body language before the run. And so people that were like standing up straight with like a wide open chest, he said it was almost like a sign of like heightened like testosterone or something, like, you're like kind of getting ready. Like it was, you're far more confident. Whereas like the people that were like, like drooped over like their handlebars of their bike, that was like almost like the opposite of that. And so he was like kind of like paying attention to us and like how we actually raced. And a lot of it kind of correlated with like how we ended up doing. And I mean, that's like one thing, but I always remember that, to like stand up straight, like kind of be ready to take it on and that 100%. Music. Yeah. I just thought that was interesting.
Oh, for sure. I 100% get it. Like you see it I used to work in sales, and you can tell like so much more just from how people are standing to whether they're receptive or whether they're giving up on it. And like that's a really cool perspective. I'm going to have a look at that at my next race and see how they correlate to the person's results. Sweet. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great hour and a half and been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone you want to thank, or any sponsors you got a shout out or anything like that at the end? Or
I don't know if I have to, but I mean, big shout out to Kona Gravity Team for the season and the past 2 seasons.
Yeah,
it's been really fun. Yeah.
Sick. Cool. Yeah. Again, thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you out at a race sometime. Maybe next year in Australia.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Right.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.